Picture the unimaginable bravery it took for a black nurse to innovate medical practices in a time of profound prejudice, knowing their efforts might be forgotten. This is more than history. It's a testament to the enduring human spirit. We're about to uncover the emotional journey of pioneers who endured unimaginable hardship, leaving an indelible mark on healthcare and our hearts. In the vast halls of history, there are echoes we rarely hear. They belong to hands that healed but went uncelebrated, to voices that comforted the dying but were never recorded, to women who carried both stethoscopes and the weight of an unjust world. These are the black nurses who changed medicine not with recognition, but with relentless grace. Long before modern hospitals gleamed with technology, there were makeshift wards where care was measured not in wealth or race, but in mercy. And in those humble rooms stood women whose compassion knew no boundaries. She was Mary Eliza Mahoney, born in 1845 to freed slaves in Massachusetts. In a nation still bleeding from the scars of enslavement, Mary chose to dedicate her life to healing even when the world refused to see her as worthy of such a calling. At just 33, she entered the New England Hospital for Women and Children, the only place that dared to train women as nurses. Out of 42 students, she was one of only 4 to graduate and the first black registered nurse in America. Pause for a moment. Imagine what that must have felt like. Every hallway whispered that she didn't belong. Every patient's doubtful gaze was another test of dignity. And yet she stayed, because she believed healing had no color. Mahoney's care was quiet but transformative. She treated every patient with equal devotion, black or white, rich or poor. Her excellence spoke so loudly, it began to silence the prejudice around her. But history, as it often does, took more than it gave. While Mary Mahoney set a precedent, her name faded into the background of textbooks, a whisper behind louder stories of men in lab coats. Yet her legacy was not lost. It was seeded, and from that seed, other women would rise to challenge, to lead, and to revolutionize the very system that once excluded them. They would inherit no comfort, but conviction. Not privilege, but purpose. Their journey from the shadowed wards of the 19th century to the battleground hospitals of 2 world wars was nothing short of sacred. Because for them, nursing wasn't just a profession. It was resistance in its purest form. Progress has never come freely. Every inch of recognition black nurses gained was wrestled from a system designed to erase them. When the Great War came, the nation called for healers, but when black women answered, the answer they received was silence. Applications were returned unopened. Letters went unanswered. Hospitals that desperately needed help turned them away because of the color of their skin. And yet, they didn't stop. Because they knew if they did not serve, their people would die unseen, untreated, unheard. Her name was Mabel Keaton Staupers. Born in Barbados in 1890, raised in Harlem, she grew up in an America still choking on segregation. But where others saw barriers, Mabel saw unfinished work. She trained as a nurse when most hospitals would not allow her through their doors. And when she realized that exclusion wasn't just personal, it was institutional, she turned her nursing uniform into a banner of resistance. To Mabel, healing was political. She believed every denied nurse meant another community without care. So she began to organize. As the executive secretary of the National Association of Colored Graduate Nurses, she became the steady voice behind a rising movement, demanding equal rights for black nurses in both military and civilian life. It was not just about jobs. It was about dignity. It was about proving that compassion knows no boundaries, and that healing should never depend on hierarchy. When World War II erupted, America once again turned to its nurses and once again turned away its black ones. Only a handful were accepted into the Army Nurse Corps. Not because there weren't enough, but because the military set a quota: no more than 50 black nurses to serve an army of millions. Imagine that. 50 women permitted to heal a nation. The insult was devastating. But Mabel refused to yield. She lobbied Congress, wrote to the president, and confronted the highest ranks of the Red Cross and the military, challenging them to live up to the very democracy they claimed to defend. For years, she was told to wait, to be patient, to let the system evolve. But patience was a privilege she didn't have. Not while young soldiers of color lay bleeding on battlefields, their sisters were barred from treating them. So she fought harder, and history began to shift. By 1945, under unrelenting pressure from Mabel and the women she led, the U.S. Army Nurse Corps finally opened its doors. Segregation in military nursing was officially abolished. For the first time, thousands of black nurses could serve, heal, and stand shoulder to shoulder with their white counterparts. Black nurses boarding army trucks, tying their caps beneath steel helmets, tending to wounded soldiers in field hospitals across Europe. It wasn't a victory that came overnight. It was bought with exhaustion, rejection, and relentless faith. Mabel once said, "We have proven our ability beyond question. Now the world must give us the right to serve where we are needed." And the world finally did, but only because she refused to be silent. Resistance gave birth to recognition, but progress was fragile. For every barrier broken, another emerged. For every door opened, a new form of exclusion waited just beyond it. Yet out of this fragile progress came a new generation, one that would not only serve medicine, but reshape it from within. And leading them was a woman whose belief in education would revolutionize opportunity itself. Her name, Estelle Massey Osborne. Revolution doesn't always begin with fire. Sometimes, it begins with a book. When the battles for inclusion left their scars, a new front opened, the fight for education. Because access wasn't enough, black nurses needed the chance to rise as leaders, researchers, and teachers. And that's where Estelle Massey Osborne stepped forward, a woman who believed knowledge was the highest form of resistance. Born in 1901 in Palestine, Texas, Estelle was one of 11 children, raised in a world that told her black women could serve but never lead. But she refused that story. In 1923, she became the first black woman in the United States to earn a master's degree in nursing education. That achievement wasn't just a milestone. It was a crack in the wall that had long separated potential from opportunity. Education had always been the great equalizer, but for black nurses, it was often a dream deferred. Hospitals were segregated. Nursing schools were few. Scholarships were nearly impossible to obtain. Estelle understood that without education, even the most gifted nurse would remain invisible. So she made it her mission to ensure that future generations would never be shut out the way she was. She began to reform how nursing was taught. Her advocacy opened doors at prestigious institutions that had never before accepted students of color. By the early 1940s, she was working with the National Nursing Council for War Service, helping secure grants and scholarships for black nursing students nationwide. Under her guidance, more than 2,000 black nurses were admitted to previously all-white schools during World War II, a transformation so sweeping, it reshaped the very face of American healthcare. But Estelle's revolution wasn't just in policy. It was in hearts and minds. She taught her students to see their calling not as service, but as leadership. She reminded them that the ability to heal was the truest form of power, and that with education came the authority to rewrite the story of who gets to be called professional. Estelle's work rippled across generations. By the mid-20th century, black nurses were teaching in universities, serving as military leaders, and heading national health organizations. She once said, "Our worth will never be measured by what we are given, but by what we refuse to surrender." And she was right. Her revolution wasn't loud, it was luminous. A quiet rising of excellence that demanded to be seen. Through Mahoney's sacrifice, through Staupers' resistance, through Osborne's revolution, the story of black nurses became a story of transformation itself. But even as the walls fell, the shadows lingered. The struggle for equality did not end with desegregation. It simply evolved. And the women who followed would inherit both the burden and the brilliance of those who came before them. Because history doesn't end where textbooks stop. It lives on, in every nurse who dares to serve with both skill and soul. Time moves forward, but the echoes remain. Each heartbeat that steadies under a nurse's care carries the rhythm of those who came before. Mary Eliza Mahoney's quiet grace, Mabel Keaton Staupers' defiance, Estelle Massey Osborne's brilliance. They do not live in history books. They live in every act of care. When the world was sick with hate, they healed anyway. When society denied them space, they built their own. And when history tried to forget them, their work whispered back, "I am still here." These women did more than tend to wounds. They redefined what healing meant. They taught the world that care was not charity, but justice. That compassion could be revolutionary. That love, when practiced through service, is the purest form of resistance. Today, when a Black nurse steps into a hospital, she carries with her a century of battles fought in silence. Every time she signs her name on a chart, she is writing another verse in a legacy that refused to vanish. And when she comforts a patient, whether in Lagos or London, Atlanta or Accra, she is performing the same sacred act of care that Mary, Mabel, and Estelle once offered to a world that did not always deserve it. We call them nurses, but they are also storytellers. Through every bandaged wound, they write the truth that humanity is worth saving, even when it's cruel. And though their names may not fill monuments or museums, their legacy is written in something greater, the act of healing itself. Because healing, it was never just about medicine. It was about equality, about faith, about the simple, radical belief that every life matters equally. So when you walk through a hospital corridor, when you see a nurse steadying trembling hands, remember, you are witnessing centuries of unacknowledged bravery. Their uniforms may have changed, but their mission never has. Because healing is how they fought, and remembrance is how we honor them. And now, I leave you with this question. What does it mean to heal, in a world still divided by the same wounds they once tried to close?